Hi everyone, this is Karen. As promised, this is lesson 1 in learning shortcuts a lot. So the first thing I'm going to go over with you is your screen when you open up shortcuts a lot. First thing that you'll see is your library. And in the library, you have basic shapes, and there are quite a few shapes provided with the program. Different things that you can use, starting off points, or to create layouts or whatever you want to do with them. There are a few different things in here. You have my designs, some design downloads, recent downloads, favorites. You can display your shapes in different ways. You can display them as thumbnails as shown here, and you can zoom over them by moving with the cursor, and you can display them as lists with information about who created them, what type of image it is, the category, and the date created. You can also search. So let's say if I wanted to find a tree, type in the word tree, press enter, and it's going to show me all the different trees that I've got. I'm going to search for a circle, and it's going to find me anything that has the word circle in the name. The other thing that's in this library is your fonts. This is where you can preview your fonts. You can also see your fonts up here in the text panel, or you can choose your fonts, I should say. This is just a listing of all your fonts, whereas this is a preview of what the font will look like. And this is also the thing that makes shortcuts a lot so interesting. There are many fonts that have special characters, such as Samantha or Desire. Desire is what's displayed right now on the screen. And the beauty of shortcuts a lot is that you see the different characters, and all you need to do is click, and it's going to be put on your mat for you, and you can work with it from there. As easy as that. And then the other panel that's in here is the projects panel. So this displays all of your projects. I don't have very many in here because I keep my projects in my own directory structure. I've only put these in here to see how it works. You can also zoom. You can display larger thumbnails or smaller thumbnails. Let's say if you have in your fonts, you have tons and tons of fonts and you want to be able to see more of them on the screen, and you can do that. You can also stretch this out so that you can display more of what's there. It can be easier to find things. So I'm going to close this panel. So let's say that you had closed that panel and you want to get it back. All you need to do is click the window menu and choose library, and then that will display that again. So the next thing I'm going to go over with you is your mat. You can see here that it says Silhouette Cameo on the mat, and what that means is that my Silhouette Cameo cutter is selected at this time. If you use multiple cutters, this can be handy because it reminds you of which cutter is defined as the default cutter at this time. You can display a grid, of course, and the way you would do that is over here in the document panel. You see how this area has a blue header and it's called document? Well, this is everything to do with documents. If you move down, this is your position and size panel, where you can choose a position, you can nudge your elements, you can align things, you can align them to themselves or to the page. You can set width and height. You can keep proportions or clear that box so that proportions are not kept. You can rotate and you can flip here. This is the fill and stroke panel, which I'm going to explain to you a little bit because this is something that people get confused about sometimes. I'm going to set that item, and then I'm going to choose something else. I'm going to choose a circle. So since green is selected, both are going to be green. If I wanted to change one of these, after drawing something, you need to click the selection arrow over here. This is similar to Silhouette Studio, where you have to go back and click this arrow to be able to do different things instead of continue drawing. So if I wanted to change the color of my triangle, I will come up here to the fill color, click it, and then these crayons are going to be displayed. You don't have to use the crayons, you can use these other choices up here, but I find the crayons work for me most of the time. So I'm going to click red, and you're going to see that red is selected over here, and it's only when I click OK that this will be changed to red. Let's say if you brought in a JPEG file and you wanted to match a color. So what I would do is I would open up Finder. I will go into, let's see, where would I have that? I think I had something in temp. Over here, no, this one I guess. Okay, so I'm going to bring this image into Shortcuts a lot by just dragging it from my folder. And you'll see that it's here now. So I would select the item whose color I want to change, come over to the color panel, click the fill color, and over here is an eyedropper. So if you click the eyedropper, come over here to where your colors are and click, now you've got this color in your color panel. So when I click OK, changes my circle to the color that I chose from up here. I'm going to do that again. So I've selected my red triangle. I'm going to come up to my color panel here, click in the color fill box. I'm going to take the eyedropper, move it over the area of my image where I want to choose the color, and I'm going to take this turquoise color. It shows up over here now, and then I'm going to click OK. And now I've got colors that match the paper that I was using in my project. So that's about color fills, and you're going to see that there's also a color stroke. Actually, it's not only a color stroke, you also have a stroke choice. The stroke is the line around the outside of your shape. So right now this is defined as black. I'm going to change that to red so that it will show up better. So you see now there's a thin red line. I'm going to zoom in to show you that. You can see that this line, which is called a stroke, is red. So there are some other choices here that we'll get into later on. You can either have no color, you can have a pattern, or you could have a gradient as well. And under stroke, you can have color, none, or a pen color. You can change the opacity of your color, and that's what that means is the intensity of your color. If I bring it over, and I need to arrange this and bring it to the front. So up over here, I drag this to the left, and when I let it go, the yellowish green is going to start to show through the green because the opacity of this is much less now. You can change it for this one as well. You can, whoops, back to the color panel. You can bring the opacity back up, make it somewhat more intense. You can change the width of your stroke over here. Notice how that's getting thicker. You can change a line style. You can have a full line, you can have perforated lines, dotted lines. So that takes care of the color panel. Color, line, fill, and stroke panel. The next panel is your style panel. You can have normal style shadow, shadow rounded, shadow straight. I'm going to be going through these things in more detail later on. You can weld items. Your cut line can be cut, it can be draw, it can be print and cut. You can have a color laser alignment. And this last panel is your text panel. You can choose the font you want to use. You can set that font, actually I'm going to choose Desire Basic and set that as a favorite by clicking the heart over here on the right. And then all your favorites that you've defined that way will be displayed here instead of all your fonts. Okay, so let me show you that again. This choice up here, the view choice, you can choose all, favorites, or this project. So what this shows is all your fonts, your favorite fonts, or the fonts used in this project. And to define something as a favorite, you need to choose the font over here and click the heart over here. So let's go back to all, and I'm going to choose something else. I'm going to choose Deadhead Script, and I'm going to set that as a favorite. And now if I just click favorites here as my view choice, when I click my fonts, only my favorites are displayed. So I'm going to switch that back to all. This is where you would change the look of your fonts. You can make them bold or italic. Your alignment is here, size, width, tracking, leading, vertical offset. You can rotate by a degree. And whenever you see that there is this at the end of a menu choice, it means that there's another choice there. So you can skew here as well. And this is the amount that you would rotate or skew by. There's the layers panel over here. You see that there are two shapes, so there are two items over here. We're going to get into the layers panel in a later lesson. Next thing I'm going to show you is view modes. Actually, no, I meant to show you the grid. So back over here in the document panel, if you want to show the grid, you just click it right over here. Another place you can do that is in the view menu. The view menu has options for things that are related to the display of what you see on the screen. So if you want to see your grid, you would click view and then show grid. And you can define your grid in more detail here. You can decide whether you want to display your mat in horizontal or vertical mode. In vertical, your arrow would be up here at the top. And I'm going to change that to horizontal, where your arrow is over here on the side. So that will make a difference to you if you get used to laying things out on your screen a certain way, and then how you expect them to cut once you send them to your cutter. Some people got used to seeing the arrow over here, and then when they feed it through, they expect things to line up that way. So that's why it's important to be able to change that. Another thing is, if you had a 12 by 20 format, you would probably want to display it horizontally so that you can see the items on there as large as possible. But you could also change it to vertical, portrait. Then you'll see part of it, or you can zoom and see all of it. So I'm going to go back to 12 by 12. And the next thing I'm going to show you is view modes, where you can choose to see filled shapes, filled objects, or just an outline. So I'm going to click my selection arrow again so that I can move my circle back onto my mat. So in addition to showing colors, you can also decide that you may not want to show anything at all. So in that case, you would come up to view and choose show outlines only. And that's only going to show your lines or your strokes. Now, because we thickened this stroke, this still shows a color. If we go back to the color panel and we go back to a normal width for the stroke, that will bring this down. So it would be the same as here. Now, because the stroke on this one is black, you see it in black, and because the stroke here is red, you see it in red. If you change this one to red, if you change the stroke of this one to black, then it will be the same as this one over here. The other place that you can change this is in your document panel. There's an option here for show outlines only. If I clear this box, then the fills for those objects will be displayed again. Setting up your cameos, the next thing I'm going to go to, and that's a very simple thing. If you're using a Windows computer, you'll need to probably install a driver, and that's the type of thing that you can find on the Craft Edge website. They have a bunch of getting started tutorials for installing the software, activating it, installing your drivers and stuff like that. But once you've installed your driver in the software, you would go to the cutter menu, choose My Cutter, Manage Cutters, and then this is where your list of cutters is displayed. So I'm going to delete both of these so that you'll see what it looks like before you when you get started with the program. So I'm going to click Cutter, My Cutter, and Manage Cutters. So I want to add a Silhouette Cameo. So under Company Brand, I will click and I will choose Silhouette Cameo, and the brand is Cameo, so I'm going to add that to the list. I also have a GCC cutter, and the model I have is a Puma 3, so I'll add that to the list. And there, my cutters are done. And you'll see that because my Puma is now selected, the border of my mat has changed to a dark gray, and the word GCC is down here. It's a little bit hard to see, so I'll zoom in to show you. The word GCC is over here to tell me that that's the cutter that is selected at this time. If I want to change that, if you're using only one cutter, you never need to worry about this, but if you're using multiple cutters, to change your cutter, just click the cutter menu, choose My Cutter, and then choose the cutter that you want to use. So if you want to use your Silhouette Cameo, you would select that, and you see that the mat has changed to the Silhouette Cameo. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to explain to you is the shape handles. I'm going to hide the grid so it's easier for us to see here, and I'm going to delete this circle as well so that we're just working with one item here. So this first handle on the top left is called the free move. If you select that and move your shape around, you can move it in any direction, anywhere on the mat or off. After that is the vertical move, and that's this one over here. When you click and move your shape now, you can move it up and down, but you can't move it left to right. It won't go. So it locks in vertically. The next one is the horizontal move. This one locks in horizontally. When you click it and move your shape, it will move sideways, left to right, horizontally, but not up and down, so that you can be sure of maintaining a certain position while you move it sideways. The next one is called the stretch, and in the manual that looks a little bit different from what it looks like on the screen now. It's this icon over here on the bottom right, and this one will let you stretch your object in any direction all around the mat. Then there's a stretch vertical, which is this handle over here. Move this up a little bit. By the way, notice that as you move your cursor over your image, when it changes to this crosshair, that means that your object is there and you can click and select. So you can then click it and move it. So this stretch vertical over here will stretch your image up and down, but not sideways. And then there's this horizontal stretch over here, which will stretch your image horizontally, but not up and down. You have two rotating handles in the bottom left and top right corners, and when you click those and drag, you can rotate your image. In addition to these basic selection handles, you also have advanced handles. And these look similar to what you would expect to see in a program like Illustrator. They work in the same way as what I was describing earlier, but they're just regular looking handles like this. And one difference is that the rotate option, the rotate function, comes into play as you move to the corner. In all four corners, your cursor changes to a rotate handle, and you can just click and rotate your item. So that's about it for today, except that I'm just going to show you quickly what you would do to cut your image. You already have the Silhouette Cameo installed, so to cut now, all you would need to do is click the cutter icon over here. This displays the choices for your cutter. You're going to see some extras here, but that's because I'm using the Pro version. Your material is selected over here under preset. So let's say if this was vinyl, you would choose vinyl. You're cutting with a blade, but you could also choose a pen. You can have a blade pen prompt. You can cut lines, and you can cut and draw lines. This is where you would choose multi-cut, and you can have 2, 3, 4, or 5 times. So you can choose more than just 2. And this is where you change your speed and your pressure. This displays what your images or what your mat looks like going into the machine. So remember I was talking about how the arrow up at the top over here is how it will go into the machine. Let's change this and display that to horizontal. Click cutter. And now you see that the machine is turned sideways, and this edge is going into the machine, not this edge over here. See what I mean by that? Your arrow is over here, so that means that this edge is going into the machine, which is how it's represented over here. Here's your machine, and this edge is going in, and it will be cut that way. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it on the mat, and then that will make more sense to you. I'm going to put it down in the corner over here, and I'm going to click cutter, and you'll see that this is going to go into your machine. So let's say you had a small piece of green paper that's 6 by 6 inches. You would put it in this corner of your mat. Now, if you had this defined as a portrait or a vertical mat, when you click cutter, you'll see that this edge is going into the machine, so that if you had put your green square of paper over here, your mat is going to be cut over here and your paper will not be cut. So I hope that makes sense to you. If it's not very clear, just go rewind the video and watch that again. So once you've selected everything that you need over here, and you can zoom in, by the way, to see over here, and you can stretch this out so that you can see more. You can do this in all the screens in Shortcuts a lot, so that if you want to zoom in even more and make this really clear for you to understand, then go ahead and do that. So that then once you've made all your choices, all you need to do is click cut, and you can cut. So with this basic, you can start to use your machine, use Shortcuts a lot to cut to your machine. One last thing I'm going to show you, because a lot of people want to work with SVG files. So to bring SVG files into Shortcuts a lot, you need to go up to the File menu, choose Import, and then go look for your SVG file. What am I going to go and find? Let's see, I'm going to go get the thing I was working on yesterday. This RCA file. That is an SVG file, and it's flipped because I was cutting vinyl that was going to be put on a glass display in a museum. So that is all there is to importing an SVG file. So if you wanted to ungroup parts of the image, you can do that by right-clicking and ungrouping. And don't forget that the undo button is your best friend. Undo will undo whatever you've done and bring you back to where you were, so you can't break anything. Go ahead and experiment and try things out. When you want to save a file, go up to the File menu and Save Project, or Save Project As if you want to rename something. If you want to export an SVG file, you're going to need to choose File, Export. And I'm just going to go put this in a temp directory, and I'm going to call it a test SVG, and SVG is chosen over here. If you want to choose any other type of file, you just choose it here. Then I'll click save, and it's going to prompt me with some choices. You could have something selected on the screen and save only that and choose selection only if you wanted. You can show registration marks if it's a print and cut project, and you can choose design space compatible if you're creating files that will be cut with the Cricut Explorer in design space, which is something that I just do by default. And that's about it for the lesson for today. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to subscribe to my channel and join us next week for lesson 2 in using Sure Cuts A Lot.